All right, we'll start recording. It's 5 o'clock. And Lance, good to have you here. You got my screen up, right? Okay. Is that screen showing up on the
video?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why I'm getting that box. Huh. All right. So, because you're here, Lance, you got anything that's pressing or hot on your mind or want to talk about?
Everything seems to be going smooth. I understand all the coursework, understand the requirements, and like feedback. It's all right.
Yeah, you're understanding it. The key on it is, as an example of the feedback, there are certain things that, I look for. Obviously, there's some little quirks and things like that in everybody. But it should be fairly straightforward at this point. What are we, week 5, right? So in the response on the IKEA scenario, you would have had something that started to look like this. Let me do the share. Okay, do you see like a Word document there? All right. And most people are getting it. Again, in the first paragraph, we talk about a brief description of the scenario. I've read the scenario, so don't spend a whole lot of time. Use it more like an introduction paragraph and focus on the innovation or leadership piece of it. To just regurgitate some of the salient facts out of there, unless it's something you want to introduce now and then get into later, there's really no need, because I've read the scenario. So there shouldn't be a whole lot in that paragraph. A lot of people are taking up an inordinate amount of space because, in part, I don't think they have anything else to talk about. All right, where I really want to see the meat is what you have to say about it. Say, okay, so I think IKEA started off very innovative, but they're an older company now. When did IKEA start? Do you remember? When you formed it?
40s?
Yeah. So the originator of IKEA just passed away last year, 2018. So, it's been around a while. So part of that is in the introduction is say, okay, yeah, he was innovative at the time in the 40s. But as we know from our life cycle of an organization, remember, birth, infancy, maturity, and then death, unless there's an innovation, right, that organization's going to fail. Well, obviously, he's doing some of that. Okay, and so part of that would have been, what are some of those concepts of innovation that an organization that's mature needs to do. What about the Marine Corps? It's been around for 240 some odd years, right? Thank 244. Thank because the anniversary, the birthday's coming up. Well, there's got to be some innovation in there. We can't be doing it the way we did with Samuel Nicholas. First recruited the first guys out of the tavern. So in the chapters, you got an idea of that. And so as I scroll down, I'm looking for some discussion on how IKEA delivers value, and then what you got out of chapter 6 and or 7. And you can use some of the concepts you've learned in previous chapters if you want. But chapter 6, I kind of gave away, not kind of, I did give away the concept, a major one that you should have gotten. When I talked about Marine Corps plan process, right? Yeah. So what I gave you then is that first question on discussion, which was again last week, which was what? Design thinking, right? First step in design thinking is what's the problem, right? Yeah, it's problem framing. So I already kind of gave you the answer on IKEA is how does IKEA get after, or do they use design thinking? And most of the students and most of y'all, and you did, got there. You identified design thinking. Okay. The second is could you have brought that into your paper? Sure. Concept of newness. Hey, new and improved. All right. Well, one of the innovations IKEA has done is they've gotten away from the Allen key, lock washer method of assembly, and they've gone to a new wood dowel type of assembly system. Okay, very innovative and new. So that was kind of where I was trying to take some people, and most everybody got it. Anyway, the others that you could have brought out were product line gaps, distribution gaps, usage gaps, and no competitive product gaps. And so one of the things IKEA learned and has gone after in the way of gap is this whole issue of what about displaced persons and refugee camps? They have to have a place to live and they have a place to store their stuff. And so one of the gaps that your research bringing it forward would have brought out is the offering refugees an alternative to tents. In fact, something they did in 2017 won Design of the Year in 2017. And then, of course, they've got the Space 10 Innovation Lab in Copenhagen. Okay. And they're even looking at what the next 20 years will do in, of all things, food design. Well, that's kind of interesting. IKEA is interested in what the meatball and what the potential of algae is for food. Why would IKEA be doing that? Well, they're taking this seriously of delivering value, to their customer. Anyway, so just some things to consider. Getting back into it, product planning development process, table 7.2, idea development process, and then remember in chapter 7, not the global business plan, but the opportunity assessment. In other words, is this worth going? Okay. Or you could have even brought something out of the creative intelligence article that I sent out. Okay, I don't know if you got a chance to read it or not. But it talks in there about this article, Unleashing Creativity. There's an element of we want of creativity quotient, a CQ, standardized test, just like an IQ test. Problem is that IQs are different than creativity, and where standardized tests can be developed for IQs and measuring them, it doesn't really hold out in creativity. So there's some challenges. But if I'm IKEA, remembering my 7 aspects of organizational success, then I need to be recruiting certain types of people into my organization. I certainly need reliable, process-oriented people, to demand some of my stores and the like. But ultimately, I've got to have some creativity people, some people who can think, enough out that we can, get after what is, the filing cabinet of the future. Do we even need filing cabinets in the future? Will everything be on a smartphone? And I'm, kind of talking out extreme, but that's kind of where we're heading. Anyway, you did a great job. You normally nail them, but that was some of the stuff I was looking for. And then remembering out of last week, it wasn't just design thinking, it was futures thinking, where we're combining data, trend analysis, intuition, imagination of developing sustainable paths of action. In other words, knowing what we're after and how we want to get there. Not very easy. And it was interesting that the timing was such that this week I sent you out a CFR, Council of Foreign Relations is not a conservative think tank, to be sure. It's if not bipartisan, it's more progressive than it is conservative. And it was interesting to see their conversation in there on innovation and where we're losing competitive advantage. In this particular case, competitive advantage as it's relating to national security. All right, anyway, so solving problems. Ask the question, scan the world, map the possibilities, ask the next question. Sounds a little bit trite, but hey, again, it's part of that process, and we do it all the time. You remind people all the time, what do I know? Who needs to know it? Have I told them? And then getting into chapter 7, I don't want to minimize this trimming technique. That was good stuff and definitely worth your while if you weren't quite good on it to go back and reread it. It's a very good chapter. All right. And you've got the rubric for the paper. Okay, so current events, 20 habits is kind of a fun one that I found a few years ago. When to say no is very critical for people. That's very hard for people to do. I just got a phone call about possibly joining the USO Advisory Committee, and I'll take a hard look at it. And part of what I like now is having my own time. Love, make mistakes, plant seeds, don't be in a rush. You see them all. But it's fun because this says 20 habits, and it goes up to number 18. And then it says, wait, I thought you said there were 20. And they give you the 19th, which is secret to success. A habit of a mental millionaire is give yourself permission to sometimes be wrong. That's number 19. So, there's only 19. This 1% a day, number 14 in the upper right-hand corner. I don't know if you can see it or not. It says 1% a day. And you see the card in the lower right-hand corner at 211 degrees, water can get hot. At 212 degrees, it boils. So 1 degree makes all the difference between hot water and the ability to move aircraft carriers, I don't know, trains have steam engines anymore. I'm sure some do. But, even a nuclear powered aircraft carrier isn't propelled per se by nuclear power. The nuclear power heats the water that produces the steam that drives the turbines, which drives the ship. And so just that little bit, just that 1 degree added effort can move an aircraft carrier or power a train, or in the world, would make all the difference. So just kind of leave that with you. Okay, so that was week 3 was Ryanair, right? No, Ryanair is the one that's coming up, right?
Yeah, we with,
Yeah, or L'Oreal, right? Okay, so so Ryanair do this Saturday. Okay. All right. And again, there's that piece of being able to do your SWOT analysis, understand interpreting trends, and then get the buy-in. Okay, and you're good on your paper?
Yeah.
Still tracking on Tesla? All right. Importance of innovation, how it enhances the Tesla's success, or needs to, that starts to sound like a position statement, right? Tesla is or is not an innovative organization, right? And then the importance of leadership. 1,250 words. Again, I don't grade on words. If you can make your point and answer all those questions in 500 words, go for it. I don't think you can. I think that's very ambitious, but brevity is the soul wit, and some people can get across. Conversely, if it takes you 12,500 words or 30 pages to make your point, go for it. I'm not necessarily going to be impressed, but if that's what it takes to make your point, not just fill it with filler, okay, because I'm interested in what you have to say. And then, of course, APA formatting, double space, inch margin. Please use paragraph headers. That's makes a big difference, I think. And definition of innovation. Where do you suppose I want you to get that definition from? And then whether you agree with it or not. If you want to add to it, that's fine. But that's our first step. Okay, good. All right. So chapter 8 was an easy chapter to read because all we're talking about is a global business plan. And in that, it is, as described, a document prepared, and it says by the inventor or entrepreneur or whoever, that describes all the aspects of making the innovation into whatever the adventure is, a roadmap. And so, again, you're going to do a gap analysis. Only in this case, it's not unlike what you've already had in our classes, okay? That is asking yourself, where are we now, right? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? And that how we get there is the strategy, right? And that strategy has to be necked down into a series of plans, actions, milestones, documents, and how we're going to resource this damn thing. Now, we've already done in chapter 7 the opportunity plan. We've identified there's a gap. We've looked at the industry. We note there's a gap. Okay, so we know this is worthwhile from that perspective. Now we got to take into account external factors. We got to establish objectives, and we need to plan out at least the next 5 years. So if I ask you what the purpose of a global business plan is, having already read chapter 8, you would come up with at least 1 of 5, right?
2 to 5,
Yeah.
yeah, I would probably do it with page 139 for that.
Yeah, 138, 139 lists it out. What's the first one?
So,
Business plan is written for several purposes. The most frequent one is?
introduce the plan. The second one is, get the way you want right now. Main body.
Yeah, take a look at page 138 and just read it right out of the text.
The business plan is written for several purposes. The frequent one being to attain finances and innovation at some stage in its development.
Yeah, so the number one reason for a global business plan is to obtain financing. Okay, makes perfect sense. The second reason is that we have other resources needed in addition to financial. We may need people to work on this, right? We may need we can't just work out in the open. We're going to have to work, well, we may have to work out in the open. We need a facility. We need tools. We need tables, lights, chairs, rugs, carpeting. I mean, you name it. Okay. We may need legal permission to work on this. If it's some type of stem cell research, we don't want to run afoul of certain federal regulatory aspects, particularly if we're talking about fetal stem cell. And then third reason is to establish the direction for future development and launch. Okay, plan of action milestone, you work backwards. So, if we don't identify a launch date, then shame on us, right? Even President Kennedy, when he tasked America to go to the moon, said, we will send a man to the moon and return him safely by the end of the decade. And this is what, 1961, he's making this speech, whenever it was. So people knew that by December 31st, 1969, we'd better have a man on the moon. And as it turned out, it was mid-July, right? And then with the plan, if we have tasks, we've got to evaluate the results of that on a regular basis. We may not be able to make it, and we need to know that. And so in the tagline, and then of course you see provides a document for obtaining the needed resources, partners, et cetera. Okay, if you're going to go into a bank, they're going to want to see some spreadsheets probably. They're going to want to see some of your financial calculations. How did you derive a need for this kind of money? What's the plan? And so in my breakout box, think about it. Isn't it easier for you to get involved in something when it's got clear direction and the end result is well defined? If I ask you to come over to my house to help me move, and I don't tell you where I'm moving, when I'm moving, what I'm moving, how I'm going to move, that doesn't make it for a very good day, does it? So, okay. All right. Remember, innovation can never be risk-free, okay? But you sure better look close before you leap. And that is a critical piece that you should have gotten out of the text. Okay, sometimes innovation goes wrong. And those tend to be when the customer benefit is unclear or unimportant to people, okay? I may not need a self-licking ice cream cone, where the technology is not yet up to task, happens a lot. Sometimes we're just not going to be able to get there. There may not be a market just yet. Or the business model is so stupid that it's dead on arrival. Okay, one of the examples I give is I don't know if you ever saw this YouTube video I'll show you has a company that had a very stupid business model. Okay, pets.com. And then,
Okay, Dino.
hold on. Sorry.
Deliveries for pets.com. Purely.
All right. Bear with me here.
Okay, Dino.
All right. I forgot I got to at least share this with you, right? All right.
Please don't go. Hey, man, I'm getting car sick. I think I'm gonna pee.
So these were very popular commercials. They even showed up on Super Bowl ads. So this company was spending an amazing amount of money. It was pets.com. Okay, so it was an online pet store, about 10 years ago. Hey, this is okay. Online pet store, online, I mean, good stuff. Spending money on Super Bowl ads, which are cheap. Right? Here was their business model. Pets.com was selling their products for less than what they paid for them. Okay, and a lot of people look at me like, you got that wrong. No, I didn't get that wrong. Pets.com went out of business because they were selling their products for less than they paid for. So, obviously, and so you think, how can that happen? Well, there's a bunch of examples. Iridium, Motorola, boy, they had it. Yeah. Thank you. You have Webvan, online grocery business, burned through $1 billion and still couldn't figure out their business plan. Okay, well, it's funny that a lot of other people have figured it out, none the least of which is Uber Eats. Okay, so you set up a system where I can order from a grocery store and offer it up to an Uber driver to deliver it to my house or Grubhub or whatever. Okay. But the bottom line here and the lesson is to first reduce the uncertainty surrounding critical project assumptions before committing, because once you burn through that resource, it's awful hard to get it back. It's awful hard for Redvan to make up for what they burned through. So let's get this thing figured out. That's why you've got a need to do the business plan. And then, of course, GM's EV1, which was horrible. They made 1,100 of these, and each one was about $1 million a copy. And in the end, they only leased 288 of them. So, all right, 3 sections to the business plan. Section 1 is the title page, table of contents, and executive summary, where you're going to give people just enough information to get you in trouble. That summary is about a 3 to 4 sentence. So you're able to describe your project in about 3 to 4 sentences. This is confidential business plan. Then you need to number it and track who's got what copy, because some people might steal your ideas. Section 2 is the main body. The main body consists of a number of plans, technology plan, marketing plan, financial plan, production plan, and has all those in there. If you look, first off in the main body, in the first block, it's the description of your business, your mission statement, okay? And if it's outside of your mission statement, it's going to cause some eyebrows to go up. But, so if you could tie it and make the argument, or you change that mission statement, okay? And you see that a lot in a lot of companies these days where, as an example, Marriott Hotels doesn't even say they're in the hotel business anymore. They're in a management type of business. Okay. And then 2.0, description of the industry. Again, there you go. Trend analysis, intuition, being able to look forward. And, you're banking a lot of money on getting that piece right. So, this is why you get paid the big bucks. If you look there in the bottom left, financial plan, remember pro forma. In the case of pro forma, income statement, cash flow statements, balance sheet. Remember, that's an accounting term that says, here's what we've developed. You can't do an income statement by the true letter of the law because you haven't got that income. So pro forma means what you're anticipating. Here's our projection. Any company that's listed and has to file through the SEC and the IRS has to do, to a degree, a pro forma income statement. If they get their projections wrong, they could pay a heavy price for it. None the least, if they get it wrong, they'll pay a price in stock share price. And you'll hear it all the time. Walmart didn't meet the anticipated third quarter growth target. They said they would be 10% growth, and they were 5%. What happened? And it unhinges things. So, there's a definite science in this, and it's tough. It isn't easy. Okay, and then you have an organizational plan. Look at that. Who are they? What are their authorities? What is the management team's background? Are they knowledgeable about this particular industry that you're coming up with a plan to get into? Well, organizational structure, again, part of those 3 who's and 4 hows, right? And then a description of the company's operation and flow of orders of goods. Section 3 is your support documents. Look at Appendix A on support documents. Hey, I'm going to want to see who you got. Tell me the people you got on board on this. Who's going to run this? If I'm going to give you resources, I may be very excited the fact that you've got, Lance Oufnac on your team. And if you, when you get out, you're going to hear companies are going to approach you, particularly if you're choosing a contractor route. Companies are going to approach you. Can we use your resume? Well, have you got this? Have you secured the contract yet? No, we're in bid process. Well, this is why. This is part of the bid process. They'll want to see who the company has that will come in and do these jobs. Okay? How can we fail? Typical causes of failure. Market doesn't accept the innovation. Okay? Market didn't like the Etzel. Market didn't like the new Coke. Market didn't like, a lot of, they didn't like, I don't know, name me another innovation. Market didn't like, Big Mac or Burger King taking ham out of the word hamburger. I don't know, certain food items, maybe coming off the menu. Cost overruns, unrealistic objectives. You're not resourced, or you didn't put the right people in there. And so it tells you clearly innovation can never be risk-free. There are a lot of unknowns, but the process of validating or invalidating these critical assumptions should stop you from ever completely misreading the basic economics of an opportunity. In other words, hubris, meaning, hey, I can't fail, never gets the better of humility. So part of this is going through the process may save you from making a huge mistake. When we talk about the null hypothesis, remember, null refers to the common view of something. So an approach is rejecting the null hypothesis means if it's generally accepted hypothesis, you're going to try to prove it wrong. Company A sells vaping oil on the market. Well, they have to be safe, right? That's the null hypothesis. And what are we finding out? Some of it isn't. And so, part of that is well, whose responsibility is that? In the end, that's your responsibility. Before you vape that stuff or whatever, did you validate or invalidate some of the critical assumptions you made about that product you're about ready to inhale? In other words, you found it because it was cheap and off the market. Shouldn't that have told you something? And I'm not saying anybody deserves the illness, but part of this whole thing, if you ever heard the term rejecting the null hypothesis, it is predominantly about challenging the conventional wisdom. Everybody thinks it's okay. All right, then let's challenge that a little bit. Alfred Sloan wrote about it in My Years with General Motors, and Mark Twain said it. When you find yourself on the side of the majority, maybe you ought to pause and reflect. Did you ever see the movie Brad Pitt, World War Z? So that's the on the right. In World War Z, the Israelis built a wall to keep the zombies out. Brad Pitt wants to know why. And this guy he's talking to in the car says, I was the 10th man. It was my duty to disagree and prove conventional wisdom was wrong. And in the end, he did. So just something to think through. All right. We got about 2 minutes before this damn thing cuts off. Like last week. I wasn't trying to be rude, but
I don't think the class would help.
the global business plan, I'm going to ask you a couple of very direct questions on, if you haven't already looked at the discussion questions. One is, what are the reasons behind it? And then what I'm really driving you to is, what is one of the purposes that you already got out of your reading? The other is in the global business plan, it talks about what type of corporate structure